Yep. Okay. So this is recording, and just like the previous sessions that we've held, all of this will be available online after the video recordings, as well as we'll be posting some of the Q&A online after as well. The presentation, we have a more condensed presentation today that we'll be going through than we did in the previous sessions, which were a little more detailed. And it just going in to some different information, making sure we understand the technical aspects and some of the technical changes that we're proposing. We will be posting, or the presentation will be posted online as well. So all of that information will be available. There is a Q&A feature that you can use as we go through the presentation if you want to ask questions. But also what the plan for after the presentation is just to have a more kind of dialogue and a question and answer session. We'll allow each person, if you want to ask a question at the end of the presentation, you can use the raise hand feature, and we'll promote you to a speaker, and you can have your video and audio on if you like. And you can ask a question. We'll have each person just limited to one question at a time, so that if we can get through everybody and everybody has at least a chance to ask one question if they'd like. And then if you have a second question, after that question, you can raise your hand again, and we'll kind of go back through the queue again if there are more questions and everybody's had a chance. So that is how all of that will work. And always there's an opportunity for a written comment or reaching out to us separately if you have additional questions following the meeting as well. So if you want to go ahead and start sharing the presentation, Abby, we can jump into that piece. Okay, so why are we here today? We wanted to schedule this additional time to review some of the technical details of the draft ordinances that we're proposing. And we wanted to give you, those of you within the marijuana industry or potential applicants within the industry, just a time to answer some questions and make sure that the draft proposal is as clear and concise, and that we're being as transparent as possible. And so we, before we move forward into the legislative process and present this formally to City Council, we wanted to just take as much feedback and provide as much opportunity for participation as possible. And so that's what that was the goal of today's session. So for those of you that have attended some of the previous sessions, this slide is familiar. But just to go over kind of the three different bills that we're bringing forward through the legislative process. And again, if you weren't able to attend those discussions, those presentations are online. Both the video recordings as well as the presentations are posted on our website. There's already a Q&A that from those sessions that is posted online that we'll be continuing to add to as we get questions. But just to recap real quickly, the summary of the bills that we're proposing. The first one is an omnibus bill. It's the biggest bill of these three. It combines the most information. The first topic within that bill is social equity. This is something that we've been talking about and focusing on since 2018. And we wanted to make sure that before we initiate any new licenses, that we are incorporating a social equity lens to both our existing licenses and our existing program before we initiate issuing new types of licenses like delivery and hospitality. So that's really been our key focus in making sure that there is an equity lens and an equity component to our marijuana licensing ordinances. So as a result of that social equity, there's also some other changes to existing licenses where we're applying that equity lens to those existing licenses and how we distribute those licenses. Additionally, the state had a sunset bill that was adopted a couple of years ago. And so there's some cleanup language in that bill to align our code with the state's code and just make sure that we're synced up and being consistent. And then finally, the last piece within this bill is the marijuana delivery program. Since this applies to existing licenses like a transporter and a store license, we incorporated it into the omnibus bill since that's where we're making the changes to existing licenses. The second bill is enacting a marijuana hospitality program, which will allow for lawful consumption at establishments. This is, adopting the state's 2019 bill for hospitality. This is Denver's bill to opt into that state license. And then finally, once that more robust hospitality program is established, then we would propose repealing the citizen-initiated designated consumption license, which was adopted in 2016 by the voters, but is replaced with that more robust hospitality program in the second bill. So with that, I will hand it over to Abby to go through some of the details of our proposal.
Hi, everybody. My name is Abby Borchers. I'm a policy analyst with the Department of Excise and Licenses, and I'm going to go through some of the more technical details of the omnibus bill that gets into a bit more detail than we went through in the past 3 feedback sessions that we had previously that were a bit more high level and geared toward different groups besides just industry, but knowing that industry will be interested in some of these more technical details, that's what we'll talk about today. So beginning with some of these new features of Chapter 6 of the Marijuana Code, we are planning to repeal and replace Chapter 6 of the Denver Revised Municipal Code. And then this bill will also move the medical marijuana provisions from Chapter 24 to Chapter 6, where retail marijuana provisions are already located. So both medical and retail will be in the same chapter. I've included a link to a chart that we've created that compares the old code sections of Chapter 6 and Chapter 24 to the new Chapter 6. Because this is a full repeal and replace, there's not really a red line of Chapter 6, but you can see where provisions used to be compared to where they'll be in the new Chapter 6. This bill also aligns our code with the state marijuana code by incorporating some parallel terminology. We used to call medical stores medical centers. We want to call them medical stores and retail stores in line with the state. Similarly, medical cultivations used to be optional premises cultivations. We want to just align that terminology across the board, just as the state did in their sunset bill in 2019. And then provisions governing existing licenses have been looked at through an equity lens, and we are revising those as necessary to clarify or update these requirements. And then adjustments to language to be consistent with current practices, address evolutions within the cannabis market, and just simplify the readability of the code. So starting with advertising, you might notice that there is a new definition of advertising in the code. The old definition was the terms advertise, advertising, and advertisement mean the act of drawing the public's attention to a retail marijuana store or retail marijuana products manufacturer in order to promote the sale of retail marijuana or retail marijuana product by the store or manufacturer. The new definition is a little bit broader. Advertise, advertising, or advertisement means the act of drawing the public's attention to a medical or retail marijuana business in order to promote the sale of cannabis by a medical or retail marijuana business. The omnibus bill will maintain the prohibition on most outdoor advertising. In 2019, the state expanded the allowance for outdoor advertising to allow for billboards and other methods of outdoor advertising. We would maintain our current prohibition on outdoor advertising. However, we are also maintaining some of the exemptions to that prohibition. So the prohibition on outdoor advertising does not include a fixed sign on the business's zone lot for the purpose of identifying the business. Any advertisement in a newspaper, magazine, or other periodical of general circulation, and advertising which is purely incidental to sponsorship of a charitable event. On top of that, we are adding an exception to the prohibition on outdoor advertising. It would not apply to apparel, consumer goods, or paraphernalia containing only a marijuana business's name, logo, or distinct design features. So in 2019, the state adopted an exemption for branding that basically allows for marijuana businesses to advertise using their branding. We are not adopting that same broad exemption, but we are adopting an exception for these specific items that are apparel, consumer goods, and paraphernalia. So to just go back to the location requirements, this chart shows what the location requirements would look like for license types across the board. So for hospitality, they would be required to locate 1,000 feet from a school, childcare facilities, city pools and rec centers, alcohol and drug treatment facilities, and then 1,000 feet from other hospitality licenses. These mirror the proximity restrictions that were in place for designated consumption areas, which were created in the Citizen-Initiated Ordinance Initiative 300 in 2016. And then we are mirroring that proximity restriction that exists for stores, 1,000 feet between stores and centers. So we are making a minor adjustment to the way that we measure the distance between city rec centers and pools and hospitality businesses, formerly designated consumption area licenses. So the current method of measurement is illustrated in this sort of rudimentary graphic here, but currently it's a straight line measurement from the nearest property line of the land used for the rec center or outdoor pool to the nearest portion of the building in which the designated consumption area is proposed to be located. And then our proposed method of measurement is a straight line measurement from the nearest external portion of the building in which the rec center is located, or the fence or barrier of the outdoor pool to the nearest external portion of the building in which the retail marijuana hospitality and sales business is proposed to be located, or to the just hospitality business. So you can see here that the old method of measurement would capture, for example, the land around the rec center or outdoor pool. So it would capture, for example, a park, whereas the new method of measurement would not capture the park around the rec center or outdoor pool. This just better executes the intent of the proximity requirement. It wasn't the intention to capture the entire land area, in some cases a large park around a rec center or pool. And then it more equitably applies the requirement to all neighborhoods, as some neighborhoods are more likely to have parks around their rec centers while more densely populated neighborhoods are not. For example, Carla Madison Rec Center downtown doesn't have a park around it, whereas the Washington Park Rec Center does. And then we would make a similar adjustment to the measurement from stores or hospitality businesses to drug or alcohol treatment facilities. So currently the measurement is from the nearest property line of the land used for the drug or alcohol treatment facility to the nearest portion of the building in which the store or cannabis consumption business is located. And then the proposed method of measurement is from the nearest external portion of the building in which the drug or alcohol treatment facility is located to, from the nearest external portion of the building in which the drug and alcohol treatment facility is located to the nearest external portion of the building in which the hospitality business or the store is located. So again, this more accurately applies the intent of the proximity requirement. In some cases, we were seeing that a drug and alcohol treatment facility was housed inside a building located on a large medical campus or other large land area. And we want to protect the building that the treatment facility is in, not necessarily the parking garages or other buildings on the campus. So we're making a few changes to how we do the public licensure process. First, we would require a social impact plan to be submitted with the application instead of a community engagement plan. Social impact plans are a little more robust than community engagement plans. They have requirements for a sustainability plan and a diversity and inclusion plan. Social impact plans must be made publicly available, so we're improving transparency for neighborhoods to be able to read those social impact plans when they'd like. Social impact plans also must be submitted with renewals and include updates on the goals that were listed in the original social impact plan. For hospitality licenses, we would require evidence of community support for the initial licensure, which would be included in the social impact plan. This encourages applicants to communicate with their host neighborhood and work through any issues prior to the needs and desires hearing. Evidence of community support was included as an application requirement in the citizen-initiated ordinance that created cannabis consumption licenses. And this can include a letter of community support or non-opposition, a good neighbor agreement, or another form of evidence deemed acceptable by the director. If there is no filed opposition to the license application, we would allow for an expedited docket style hearing. This saves applicants time and money required to appear at a needs and desires hearing. And then in the omnibus bill, we are deferring to the Denver Revised Municipal Code, Chapter 32 on hearing procedures for new licenses and license renewals. In the old code, there were specific hearing procedures spelled out for certain license types. Chapter 32 of the Municipal Code already spells out hearing procedures for all types of licenses that we issue. So this is really just a technical cleanup to align hearing procedures for marijuana licenses with those for other licenses, including things like the appointment of hearing officers. And finally, section 6-222E clarifies the conditions under which a medical or retail marijuana business may be required to undergo a renewal hearing in accordance with existing good cause standards in state law and existing standards in the DRMC. These were already conditions under which a business could be required to have a renewal hearing, but since they are based on standards that are scattered throughout the old code and in state law, we just wanted to improve transparency for businesses and neighborhoods by listing them out in one place in the new code. All right, some other changes throughout the omnibus bill include hours of operation in 6-209. We're proposing extending store hours from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. and to 8 a.m. to midnight. We're also proposing requiring stores to remove product and cash from the sales floor and secure it in a safe at night. This is intended to cut down on the amount of product and cash that burglars tend to escape with when they burglarize marijuana stores. We're proposing a few fee changes. We recently did a fee study to understand how much it actually costs us to administer some of our license types and license amendments. So we're proposing increasing the transfer of location fee from $750 to $1,000 for those licenses that don't require a hearing, and then $1,500 for licenses that do require a hearing when they move locations. We're proposing increasing the modification of premises fee from $150 to $300 and increasing the transfer of ownership fee from $150 to $250. The state recently created what's called a transition permit. So when a business is moving from one location to another, they don't have to move all of their regulated product all in one night. This allows them to be operating at 2 locations at once for a short period of time while they're moving from one location to the other. So we're just updating our code in section 6-220 to allow for a licensee with a valid transition permit from the state licensing authority to temporarily operate at both the new location and the former location once a change of location has been approved. Another change that we've made to update and align with the state code is that a marijuana cultivation facility may transport marijuana product in an outdoor portion of a limited access area, only if the outdoor portion complies with state and local laws and regulations applicable to outdoor limited access areas for medical and retail cultivation facilities. And then we made some clarifications about modifications of premises. So you can see those in section 6-221. Approved modifications to the licensed premises of a medical or retail marijuana business license shall not affect any exemption that the licensed premises may enjoy from proximity or location restrictions. And then the director has the ability to deny an application in which the modification of premises would decrease the distance between the nearest external portion of the building to a site or area that's protected by proximity or location restrictions. We also made some technical updates to the Unlawful Acts section. So in the old code, advertising outside the bounds that are allowed within the code is an unlawful act, but that was located in section 6-211, licensing requirements for retail marijuana stores. And it made more sense for that unlawful act to actually be in the Unlawful Acts section. So that's where we've moved it. We just cleaned up the language around the requirement to operate in compliance with state and city laws and with a state and city license. In the old code, there was no unlawful act related to unlicensed delivery operations. We just added an unlawful act that it's unlawful to deliver marijuana without the required licenses and permits. And then hours of operation was previously in the Unlawful Acts section of the old code. And in the new code, it would be in a more appropriate location in the marijuana store licenses section. And finally, there are some new definitions in the code. So just wanted to point out that these are new definitions that you might want to go back and just take a look at. But generally, these were put in place to align with the state code. So definitions of cannabis, common ownership, private residence, social equity applicant, person, licensee, smoking, and liquid petroleum gas. Those last two, smoking and liquid petroleum gas, are in the hospitality bill, and the rest are in the omnibus bill. We also formalized some definitions that used to be scattered throughout the code. So the definition of neighborhood of undue concentration for cultivation facilities and for store locations were previously not in the definition section of the code. So we are just moving them there. Same with party and interest and continuous operations, formerly just in different places throughout the code. So we wanted to consolidate those in the definition section. And finally, we modified a couple of definitions. The first is alcohol and drug treatment facility, which means any treatment facility licensed or approved by the State Office of Behavioral Health in the Department of Human Services as provided in Articles 80, 81, and 82 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. This change just gives us the ability to use an existing list that's created and updated regularly by the Department of Human Services of all those treatment facilities that exist in Denver. And this is publicly available on their website. So this will just make it easier for us to integrate these drug and alcohol treatment facility locations into our existing preliminary non-binding proximity checks. And it'll make it easier for potential applicants to determine if their intended location is too close to one of these treatment facilities. We also modified the definition of location. So in the new code, location means a structure or building identified by a distinct street address assigned by the city in accordance with Article 4 of Chapter 49 of this code. To the extent the structure or building consists of separately described units, suites, rooms, or buildings, or other similar subdivisions, the structure or building shall nevertheless be counted as one location. For the sake of consistency, we wanted to apply this definition of location to all license types, not just to cultivations and stores, which is how it was previously written. Okay, so before we get into our Q&A session, I just wanted to reiterate a couple of ways to continue to provide feedback, especially feedback of a technical nature. It's easier to incorporate technical feedback when it's submitted in writing. So you can submit written comment to marijuanainfo@denvergov.org, and we've provided a template which is linked here that you can use if you'd like to, but you don't have to. And then the deadline for those comments is January 15th at 5 p.m. Okay, so like Molly said, we'll just do one question at a time. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can call on people. So if you'd like to sign up to ask a question or make a comment, you can just use the raise hand feature in Zoom. Okay, first is John McCaskill. I'm going to promote you to a panelist, and when I do that, it'll briefly kick you out of Zoom and then bring you back in as a panelist, so there might be a slight delay.
You may be on mute, John. Maybe try to mute and unmute one more time. There you go. Now we can see you.
I figured it all out.
Hi.
Hey, Molly, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Abby, thanks for all that information. Excellent, very informative. So John McCaskill with H2BX International. We were the first and only special event licensee in 2019 for cannabis consumption. And my question is specifically directed towards not seeing anything regarding special events that's carrying over. I know a lot of the state license regulations that they've put together cover a broad swath of new opportunity. But in light of not having a 2020 to host events and knowing that Denver is a big event city, I'm curious if any language is being considered for special event permitting at all. It's seems to me a necessary step-in component, especially for social equity applicants who are going to be stepping into a new industry and maybe wanting to test out new types of business structures. And a lot of those things happen at events. I can tell you from having hosted this previously, we saw a lot of very innovative products come to the table, and I would anticipate in a new industry that that would be something that people would want to see. So I'll leave it to an answer there. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And so I think, we're trying to adopt the state's program as much as possible. Well, we are aligning with the state's program. And so I think it's just taking a look at their requirements for a hospitality business or a hospitality and sales business or a mobile hospitality and identifying how, a model that you're thinking of for a special event might align with some of the new requirements that they have in place. So there wasn't really language in the original designated consumption license specific to special events, other than it said that the permits could be for a period of less than 1 year. And so but it kind of morphed itself into a special event. So I think just taking a look at the language, the state language, as well as our proposed language, and seeing, thinking about your potential business model and finding a place to slide in something like that. So if there's specific language that you're thinking of and that you're proposing that you think would lend itself to something more along the lines of what you're thinking, I think a great suggestion would just be to provide that in written comment and send it to us, or set up some time to talk with us more about it. Obviously, we can't really provide legal advice, but if there's something specific that you're looking for, would be happy to take comment on it or answer additional questions.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll go back and look at that less than a year verbiage and submit anything else in writing. Again, thank you guys so much, and thanks for all the hard work on this.
Yeah, thank you. You're on mute, Emmy. Oh, there you go.
Next is Lindsay. I'm promoting you to a panelist.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Awesome. Okay. Hi, my name is Lindsay Aronson. I am the Director of Licensing and Compliance for Silverstem Fine Cannabis, and we have 2 stores in Denver. And I just had some comments that I did want to read out loud, and we will submit them in writing too. But I just wanted to read this on behalf of all of our executive management team at Silverstem regarding the overnight safe and vault requirements. So smaller stores rely on maintaining extensive inventory on the sales floor to compete and have taken proactive security measures to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. Some of these security measures include, first of all, at least 2 points of separation between any property entrance and the sales floor where the products are kept overnight. Points of separation in this case are commercial grade steel doors and frames with commercial hardware and anti-burglary devices, such as window security bars, latch covers, and door closers. Second, live video monitoring and exterior loudspeakers to engage any would-be perpetrators. Our live monitoring service has already deterred 4 burglaries in less than a year at our metro area stores. And this service also helps to identify false alarms. Third, alarm systems that include door and window sensors, motion detectors, and vibration sensors. Vibration and glass sensors detect intrusion attempts, which do not involve break-in attempts through the exterior doors. And last is exterior motion detection lights. So ever since we started utilizing all of these measures that I just listed simultaneously, we have not had a single successful break-in. Requiring licensees to remove all stock from the sales floor will be very labor intensive and will significantly limit the number of products a licensee may keep in inventory, therefore placing them at a competitive disadvantage, while not necessarily increasing the security measures at a given location. Please consider modifying the language for the safe vault rule to include waivers for licensees who go above and beyond the current security requirements by implementing some of the measures described above. Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, next is LJK. I'm promoting you to a panelist. You may need to unmute yourself.
There we go. Sorry, this is Logan Goolsby. I apologize about running typos. Anyways, my first question was answered by Mr. McCaskill regarding the special events permits. So thank you everyone for taking the time to present that and answer these questions. My second is regarding environmental regulations and sustainability for businesses. I know the CDPHE has made some presentations, and I'm just wondering if the city of Denver might be taking any proactive regulations to present and incorporate those proposed regulations into their rulemaking session.
So sorry, Logan, one more time. Can you just say who has adopted some?
So the CDPHE has talked about it. They've made some presentations about environmental regulations on cultivations. And so I'm wondering if the city of Denver has had those conversations with the Department of Environmental, Public Health and Environment, and taken any of those recommendations or presentations.
Gotcha. So, and Reggie just popped on, so maybe he knows more about that than I do. But I think, that would be, I think the simplest answer is just that we have language within our code that requires businesses to be in compliance with other rules and regulations, including DDPH. Well, I guess you said CDPHE. But if they adopted those regulations, then that is something that the businesses would be required to comply with. But as far as the local level regulations, if DDPHE, our local public health department, adopted something similar, then again, the businesses would be required to comply. But anything to add to that, Reggie?
That was actually exactly what I was going to say, is that yeah, they would need to comply with any public health regulations. And I'm not sure if DDPHE has had those conversations with CDPHE, but in the ordinance, we do lay out that DDPHE has rulemaking authority regarding marijuana for public health reasons, and all businesses would need to comply with those.
Cool. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation and taking the time to talk with the industry. It is very much appreciated. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised at the moment.
Oh, there we go. One more.
Lindsay Finkboner, I'm promoting you to a panelist.
Mute. Hi, how is everyone? Thank you so much for the presentation, really appreciate it. I did miss the first couple, so I apologize if this was something that was already covered. And this is in connection with the delivery permits for a transporter. And maybe this is something to still come down the pipeline in terms of the details. But for a transporter to qualify as a social equity applicant, if they're already an existing transporter, would they then have to qualify as a social equity applicant in order to apply for a delivery permit in the first 3 years?
Yes.
Yes. Yep. Sorry, I didn't know if you were going to answer, Abby.
No, that's okay. It's kind of a two-parter. I know you said one question, but it's about the same thing. So,
So yeah, yes, if an existing transporter wanted to participate in delivery over those first 3 years, there is exclusivity for social equity transporters, and so they would have to qualify as a social equity transporter in order to do delivery.
okay. And then this one is more of just a confirmation. So I know that there's transporters that don't have a licensed premises. If they don't store the product and they don't make any modifications in metric or change anything in metric, in order for that transporter to then apply for a delivery permit, they would then need to have a licensed premises to get the transporter license from Denver to then apply for the delivery permit, so long as they qualified as a social equity applicant prior to 2024.
I'm going to let Reggie answer that. Yeah, the question makes sense.
It's a really good question, and I understood the question. So we actually made some changes to this to provide that you wouldn't need to have a licensed premises in Denver to be a transporter if you were just doing delivery. You would need to have a licensed premises if you were doing if you needed a licensed premise. So if you were storing product as a transport or doing any other of the business activities for which a licensed premises would be required.
Okay, so basically Not yet. So if you don't need one, you don't have to have one. Is that what I understand? Okay.
If you're just doing delivery from the store,
From store to,
you don't need a licensed premises in Denver to get the transporter license.
excellent. Thank you. And thank you everyone for all of your hard work with this. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Yadira Silva. I'm promoting you to a panelist.
Good morning. Good morning, Mrs. Abby and Mrs. Molly. Thank you for letting me speak. I am, as you know, an equity participant, and I understood that at the beginning in my situation, I'm applying under the low income status. And I was wondering if we have to renew our application every year, and we are I'm applying under the income status, what would happen if in the next year my business is well done and my income raises up in the second or in the first and second year, my income is higher than previously? Is that going to allow me, or is that going to take my advantage from getting re-licensed?
So I'm not sure about how the process will work at the state level to qualify as a social equity applicant, and if that's an annual submittal or an annual application process. But and this is actually a really good question, because I don't think it's like something that we've necessarily thought through as far as how our process is going to work and how the workflow is going to work. But how I assumed it was going to work is that on initial application, for the first application, you have to qualify as a social equity applicant. And then from there on, you just have to renew your license annually. But you don't have to recertify qualification as a social equity applicant every year thereafter. It's just on the initial application for those first 6 years.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you.
And thanks for that question. I think that's a great point. As Molly said, that has not come up in our conversations before. I think we need to take a closer look at that, because the whole point of having our 6-year exclusivity period was to give people the opportunity to start to build wealth, to make money. And so we wouldn't want that to negatively impact your status, because you do start doing what we want this program to do. So great question. And I think we'll look into it. And if we don't have a way to make sure that's happening so that situation does not occur, we'll add something to the rules to protect that.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you for answering my question.
Okay, anyone else want to raise your hand and ask a question or make a comment? Feel free.
I thought it looked like Jessica Scardina had her hand up. Maybe she lowered it. Doesn't look like it's up anymore.
I'll promote her and ask her.
Maybe that
Hi
was
there.
her question.
Can you hear me?
Hi.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, guys. You actually answered my question when you spoke to Ms. Silva. It was initially going to be, how will you perceive that transporters qualify as social equity applicants? But I'm assuming you'll just use the state's application and assessment for that determination. Is that right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
our plan.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of these, these are great, really good questions. And I know we all want to kind of know the details of how this is all going to work and play out in our, in the application process and some of those day-to-day operational details, which we will, some of them we might not have all of the answers for quite yet as we move through the legislative process and have an eye towards implementation of all of this. Then we'll be starting to work through some more of those details too. So these are all really good questions that will help us inform what our process will look like once we start the implementation phase. And Yadira maybe had a second question.
Sure, I'll promote you to panelist.
Okay, so my next question is with regards to the contracts between the social equity participants with the transporters who are not who are not able to get their delivery license until the next 3 years. Do you guys have a specific a structure of what type of negotiations we need to do between them and I? And this question is because the other day in another meeting, I heard the comment of what would happen if the people who has the money, we are the social equity, we don't have the money, though they have the money, but then we got into negotiations of how those businesses are going to be working together. And I was wondering if you will have a structure to kind of protect us from being advantaged, so being taken advantage from us.
I'll let Abby take a stab at that one.
So you're asking if, I just want to repeat the question, make sure I understand. So the social equity transporter in their negotiations with the stores who are providing the product, are we providing any protections for?
Not to the stores, but to the social equity participants. So we as a low income participant don't have that equity, that capital to start a business. So basically the ones who have the money, it's now calling us to tell you, hey, let's work together, right? So what would happen if we enter into contracts where the social equity is going to be liable, it's going to be, it has too much risk. So if there is a way of the city to protect us from being taken advantage of.
So I think I understand your question, and it's that if is there anything currently in the ordinance right now that describes the way in which social equity licensees that hold transporter licenses work with the medical and retail marijuana stores that are providing marijuana for delivery? And the answer to that at this point in time in the ordinance is no, there's nothing in there that describes the way that those two parties should work together. But I understand your concern is that stores could take advantage in some sort of way, maybe raising the delivery prices or saying that you get less money. And if there are concerns, and if you have any language or anything that you could provide to us to maybe think through that, I think we'd appreciate it. And I think that the state is currently looking at that issue. I'm not sure what they would do about it. But I think I'm getting some text messages, so that's on their radar. But if you have any language that you could provide to us that we could maybe review, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you. I'll look into that. Thank you.
Okay, so nobody else currently has their hand raised. We'll give it another minute to see if there are any questions that come up. And just while we're waiting to see if anybody raises their hand, just a reminder, you can submit written comment to marijuanainfo@denvergov.org. There is a template on our website that is available, and it's not necessary that you use that, but it's just a good way to kind of structure the comments. If it's something that you're interested in, feel free to use that template. Otherwise, feel free to send an email or some other documentation. And again, all of this information is on our website. After the meeting today, we'll be posting the presentation from today. Probably sometime next week is when the video will get posted. And then the videos from all the previous sessions are already posted up there, as well as the draft bills, the presentations from the previous sessions, as well as that comparison chart that Abby mentioned that shows where in the old code or the current code the language is right now, and where it can be found in the proposed language. So doesn't look like there's any other questions, so feel free to reach out if anybody has anything else. And otherwise, also a good reminder is to subscribe to the Marijuana Information Bulletin as this process moves forward. That will be the best way that we will be getting out communications around any potential changes in the draft language, or once we're scheduled with City Council dates, that we'll be communicating it through that bulletin.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say thanks for attending. Thanks again for your partnership. Thanks for working with us on this program. This equity piece is going to allow us to continue our leadership role in the way we manage and regulate cannabis and continue to create the best, most exclusive cannabis industry in the country. So thank you for your participation. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to continue working with you all.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.